Hello and welcome back to White Collar Woker. Today we're talking about the two different kinds of science. On the one hand, you have the scientific process, which is an amazing thing. That's what's created the new COVID vaccines. And then you have the other science, which I'll go into. So the first is the scientific method, and the scientific method was invented sort of back in the 16th and 17th century by Copernicus, Galileo, and then Bacon, and then Newton. And the idea of the scientific process is that you have a hypothesis. The sun revolves around the earth was the hypothesis for 2,000 years, going back to Greek times. But the scientific method comes along and says, hold on, let's collect some data and we'll challenge the hypothesis. And if the hypothesis is wrong, then you come up with a different hypothesis. No, the earth revolves around the sun. Now that small change changed the course of history for the next 300, 400, 500 years, and will probably change history from then on. And that is how many of the great inventions come about today. The discovery of penicillin, the creation of computer technologies. Modern capitalism is built on, and all our societies built on that science, that hypothesis. The second kind of science stems from that, and it's subjects like epidemiology, subjects like economics, subjects like sociology. That is where you take the scientific method and you try to apply it to domains where that doesn't quite work. Let's say economics, for example. Economics is called the dismal science, which is a horrible name for it. I mean, it's very important to our modern day society, but why is it called the dismal science? Well, partly because the conclusions are very boring and quite hard-hitting, quite sort of depressing about a lot of the conclusions that economics comes about. But it's called a science. Why is it called a science? Well, the idea behind economics is that you take lots of data in, you crunch the numbers, and you come up with a scientific way to solve economic problems. But really, if you look back through history, my argument would be that economics is a tool used by politicians, by policymakers, by central banks in order to justify what they were going to do anyway. The same can be said for sociology. Sociology used to be the discovery and the study of a horrible thing called eugenics. And if you go back and type in eugenics on Google, you're not going to get a very good history. Sociology was invented by the idea that your intelligence was based on your race, which is what eugenics was. That's the original use of sociology. It was the study of different races. Nowadays, it's the complete opposite. It's the idea that if you dare talk about any difference between men, women, any sexual orientation or gender identity or race, then you are racist automatically. So sociology is a science that is used to back up and justify intellectual opinions that would have been had anyway. So the science that we're seeing today, and I don't want to get into a rant about the flu going around at the moment. Epidemiology is a great example of something that's a science, but it's a way of collecting data and coming to conclusions that you're already going to come to. I don't want this video to go on long, but if you look back and look at eugenics, which is a horrible idea and it's a terrible period of history, at the time it was the intellectual, it was all the rage. Charles Galton is a great example of someone who was incredibly smart, but they could not understand the difference between correlation and causation. And the problem is that they thought that where they were right then, where there was huge disparities in wealth and subsequently IQ between the races, they thought that was something static. But actually, that wasn't the cause. It was just a correlation. And we've looked back throughout history and seen that the IQ is not related. It's not a static thing depending on your race or sexual orientation or sexuality or gender. It changes, and that was the problem with that particular intellectual idea at the time. Now, the intellectual idea at this present moment is the complete opposite, where we think that our use of graphs and statistics is equally important, and we can get conclusions from that, but the conclusions are not about it's not so much about eugenics. Nowadays, the conclusions are about the financial sector. The 2008 financial crisis was just because the financial sector had all their risk models, they were so confident about them, and they were so wrong. In 2008, the whole thing blew up. To 2020, with the whole flu going around, epidemiologists were so certain until it was wrong. I mean, I don't care whether or not you think that we should have been into lockdown or we should have locked down further. The epidemiologists have just come out very badly in 2020. So anyway, that is the two different kinds of sciences. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please subscribe and like White Collar Wocat, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.